Welcome, dear brave soul. You're tuning into Horror Podcast, and I'm truly grateful you're here. Whether you're a long-time listener or just stumbled upon this channel, thank you for joining me for another scary tale. If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and means more than you know. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from, what brought you here, or even what kind of story you'd like to hear next. Your support keeps this channel going, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Now, let's get into today's horror story. It happened on a Thursday night, the kind of night that felt too ordinary to ever expect something bad to unfold. I had stayed late at a friend's place, and by the time I started heading back home, it was past 11. I don't usually like walking alone that late, so I caught the city bus instead. The streetlights flickered over the empty sidewalks, and the air carried that mix of exhaust and cool wind that always seems heavier after dark. My name's Hannah, and I've never looked at my neighborhood the same way since. The bus was almost empty when I climbed on. A couple of people sat scattered across the seats, earbuds in or staring blankly out the window. I slid into a spot near the middle, close enough to the exit to feel like I could slip out quickly if I needed to. That's when I noticed him. A man, maybe late 20s or early 30s, already sitting near the back. At first, nothing seemed strange, but a minute later, he stood and made his way down the aisle until he sat directly across from me. The move was too deliberate, too close for an almost empty bus. My stomach tightened. I pulled out my phone and started messaging my boyfriend, telling him where I was and who was sitting in front of me. I tried not to stare, but I could feel the man's eyes flicking toward me every few seconds. His gaze wasn't casual. It wasn't the harmless glance of a bored stranger. It was sharp, calculated, as if he was studying me. Each time our eyes almost met, I felt my chest cave in a little, the air heavier, my throat tighter. When the bus slowed at my stop, I stood quickly, heart racing. I figured if I just got off, I'd shake the feeling. But the second I stepped onto the sidewalk, I heard his shoes hit the pavement right after mine. That sound, just a half second behind my own steps, was enough to confirm what my instincts had been screaming. He wasn't behind me exactly. He walked just off to the side, pacing me, like he wanted me to know he was there. The night air felt colder suddenly, biting at my skin even though it hadn't changed. I picked up speed, heading toward the avenue that led to my apartment. My shadow stretched long under the yellow glow of the lamps, and every step felt like I was moving deeper into something I couldn't control. My breathing quickened, my fingers gripping my phone like it was the only tether I had to safety. I typed a quick message, "He's following me," but my hand shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I crossed the street, thinking maybe he'd keep going straight. For a second, relief washed over me when he didn't cross with me. My chest loosened, my pulse slowing just a bit. But then I glanced back and saw him step off the curb, following me again, this time falling behind. His pace was steady, not hurried, but purposeful. He wasn't trying to overtake me. He was letting me know that no matter where I went, he could be there too. Near my building, he walked past me, cutting ahead like he had somewhere to be. I tried convincing myself I was being paranoid, that he was just another late-night commuter who happened to take the same route. But when I slowed down, he slowed too. The rhythm of his footsteps matched mine, an echo that made my stomach twist tighter. When I turned into the narrow pathway toward my building's entrance, I kept one eye on him, even as he continued down the sidewalk. His body language told me enough. He wasn't leaving, not really. He was waiting. At the door, I fumbled with my bag, hands shaking so badly I couldn't grip my keys. My heart slammed against my ribs with a force that made me lightheaded. My breath came in sharp, uneven gasps, the kind you get when you're crying. Except I wasn't crying. I was fighting panic. My fingertips scraped against receipts, pens, useless things before I finally closed around the cold metal of the keys. I shoved them into the lock of the glass entry door, twisting hard until I heard the faint mechanical click. Relief rushed through me, but it was short-lived. I pulled the door, closed behind me, waiting for the heavy click of the magnetic seal. That's when I saw him, through the glass. His eyes locked on mine as he sprinted forward. His face twisted into something I'll never forget. Pure hatred, wild and sharp, stripped of anything human. The door hadn't fully sealed, yet when he slammed into it, forcing it open with a violent shove that rattled the frame. Panic shot through me like electricity. My body reacted before my brain could catch up. Without thinking, I screamed as loud as I could, my voice tearing through the quiet building, bouncing off the walls. It was the kind of scream that came from somewhere primal, desperate. He lunged, shoving me to the ground, so hard my shoulder hit the tile with a crack that sent pain shooting up my neck. Before I could move, his hand were around my throat, squeezing. The weight of him crushed me, every ounce of pressure suffocating. My arms flailed uselessly against his grip, but I was small, and he was strong. His skin was hot against mine, his fingers iron tight, digging into the sides of my neck. His face hovered inches above mine, eyes bulging, his teeth clenched in a snarl that made him look less like a man and more like an animal mid-attack. The world narrowed into darkness as the air cut off. My chest burned, every second like fire inside me. My brain screamed for oxygen, for movement, for escape, but my body was weak, fading. I couldn't scream anymore. I couldn't breathe. The only sound was the pounding of blood in my ears, each thud slower than the last. I don't know how long it lasted. Seconds felt like hours. My vision blurred, the edges going black, shapes dissolving. I thought, honestly, that this was it, that I was going to die there in the lobby of my own building, nameless in a police report, my last memory the hatred in his eyes. The next thing I remember is opening my eyes to see movement above me. The man was gone. My chest heaved with ragged breaths as I realized someone was leaning over me. It was the caretaker's wife, her face wide with alarm, her mouth moving though I couldn't hear her at first. Behind her, I heard pounding footsteps, the caretaker himself chasing after the man, his voice echoing through the hall, calling out. They didn't catch him right then, but the caretaker came back quickly, his hand shaking as he dialed the police, giving them every detail he could between gulps of air. 10 minutes later, officers had the man in custody. He'd been found only a few blocks away, still breathing heavily, his shirt damp with sweat. What unsettles me the most is that he didn't try to rob me. He didn't try to assault me in any other way. His only intent seemed to be to kill. That truth burrowed deep into me, colder than the memory of his hands around my throat. He had chased me not for money, not for anything tangible, but because he wanted to end me. That thought alone keeps me up some nights, staring at my ceiling, replaying his face against the glass. I owe my life to the caretaker who ran toward the sound of my scream, who didn't hesitate when others in the building ignored it. Because no one else called, no one else opened their door. I heard later that some neighbors admitted they thought it was just a fight, or that it wasn't their business. That knowledge cut almost as deep as the attack itself. If not for him, I wouldn't be here to write this. A few days later, the man stood in front of a judge. He denied everything, even with video footage of him trailing me, even with my identification and the caretaker's. His eyes were calmer in the courtroom, his hair combed, his shirt clean. If I hadn't lived through it, I might have doubted myself just looking at him there. That's how ordinary he looked. But I remembered his face twisted with rage, and I remembered the way his hands felt around my throat. They locked him up, but the image of his face pressed against that glass door stays with me, etched into my memory with a permanence I can't erase. Sometimes I wonder why. Why me? Why that night? Why did he decide to follow, to wait, to attack? There's no answer, and maybe that's the most haunting part. Because now I know some people don't need a reason. Some people just want to destroy. And once you've looked into eyes like that, you never forget them. Back in the mid-2000s, my life revolved around music, movies, and the circle of friends I built working in an entertainment retail store in downtown Indianapolis. The job didn't pay much, but it gave me people I clicked with. People who laughed at the same dumb references, who knew every obscure B-side, who felt like family in a way that only coworkers thrown together during the holiday madness can. That's where I met Eric. My name's Daniel, and this is the hardest story I've ever had to tell about someone I once called a friend. Eric came on as a seasonal hire one December. He was younger than me by a few years, lanky with this messy hair he never bothered to tame, always talking about bands like Pink Floyd and Zeppelin. He had this way of making you feel like he was genuinely interested in your thoughts, even if the conversation was just about some random movie trailer. People warmed to him quickly. I did too. Most temps came and went, but Eric stuck around. Even after the holiday rush ended, he'd show up in our group chats, comment on our Facebook posts, or drive into the city to hang out. He had this enthusiasm for everything, film, music, whatever project he was tinkering on, that made it easy to excuse the parts of him that felt off. By the next Christmas, Eric was back, working alongside me in the stockroom. He was dependable when things got chaotic. Sure, he could ramble about a live version of Comfortably Numb, like it was the cure for cancer, but at the time it felt harmless. He was young, passionate, maybe a little too eager to prove himself, but he was cool enough. He even put together a documentary about Pink Floyd. He asked me and our friend Matt to sit down for interviews. Honestly, it was impressive considering all he had was a cheap camera and basic editing software. Watching the finished cut, I remember thinking, maybe he really will make something of himself. When the store closed in 2009, the group splintered but didn't completely fall apart. Eric kept organizing reunions, driving hours to see us. He seemed invested in staying connected in a way most temps never did. At first, I thought it was loyalty. Later, I realized it was obsession. By 2011, the cracks started showing. Eric claimed he'd been working in Florida as part of a summer program, which somehow led to him doing editing work on Burn Notice. He dropped the information like it was casual, like he didn't want to brag but couldn't help himself. I wanted to believe him. He'd always been interested in film, so it wasn't impossible. But something about the way he told it felt rehearsed, like he was testing how much we'd swallow. The more time went on, the more exaggerated his stories got. Criminal Minds, The Wire, behind-the-scenes anecdotes about directors I knew he never met. He'd correct people with this smug tone that rubbed me raw, as if being younger made him sharper than the rest of us. I brushed it off. I told myself, he's excitable. He's exaggerating, but he's harmless. Then came Debbie. She was tall, confident, the kind of woman who lit up a room. I'd always seen her like a sister. She and Eric started hanging out, just movies, dinners, harmless stuff. At first, it didn't bother me. She was kind to everyone, and Eric seemed genuinely better when she was around. But over time, his attachment to her became uncomfortable. His Facebook was filled with photos of the two of them. If you didn't know better, you'd think they were a couple. Meanwhile, Eric's behavior toward me shifted. He'd drop comments meant to cut, little digs hidden under the guise of jokes. When we had reunions, he positioned himself as the leader of the group, even though he'd only been around for a fraction of our store's history. One time, he texted me about a night out, claiming everyone was going to a pub quiz, a type of event he knew I avoided. Turned out there was no quiz. It was just his way of freezing me out. Still, I tolerated him. For Debbie, for Matt, for the others who hadn't seen through him yet. By 2013, Eric told us his dad had suffered a massive stroke, leaving him severely disabled. We rallied around him, offering sympathy, support, whatever he needed. Later, I found out it was a lie. There was no stroke, no disabled father, just another story to manipulate sympathy, especially from Debbie and Matt. That should have been the point where I walked away completely. But cutting ties isn't easy when your friends are still caught in someone's orbit. The following year, Eric paid for Debbie, Matt, and another friend to see Prince live. Multiple concerts, multiple cities, hundreds of dollars. None of us understood where the money came from. He wasn't working steady jobs, didn't have a business anyone could point to. He mumbled something about freelance editing, about YouTube, but none of it added up. I started pulling away, quietly. I blocked him on social media for a while, but Debbie defended him, and I caved. I let him back in, even though every instinct in me screamed not to. From 2014 through 2016, Eric kept tightening his grip on Debbie and Matt. He made me feel excluded, constantly reminding me I wasn't part of their inner circle. He'd show up at my apartment claiming he had an early morning flight for editing work in the States, only for me to find out he just drove back to his mom's house in the suburbs. Lies layered on lies, but I didn't have the proof to call him out without looking paranoid. I dug into his claims about America. A friend of mine who had lived there told me flat out, "No way he's doing all that. Camp programs don't let you freelance on the side." A little research confirmed it. He'd worked at a camp in Maine, not Florida, nowhere near burn notice. The entire story was fabricated. By then, the distance between me and the group was solid. I loved Debbie and Matt too much to force them to choose, so I let myself drift. And then came 2018. I was at work when a coworker rushed in, her face pale. "Did you hear about Eric?" My stomach dropped. "What? Tax fraud? Something with his fake editing jobs?" She shook her head. "No, he was arrested for making videos of kids." The words hit me like a punch. My chest went hot, my ears ringing. "No," I said, even though I already knew it was true. From January to November 2017, Eric had been pretending to be a teenage girl online. He used YouTube and Omegle to lure young boys, grooming them, recording them. When the police caught him, they uncovered proof of everything. All those concerts, all that unexplained money. I realized it likely came from selling what he'd recorded, maybe even on the dark web. He'd once warned me never to go near it, saying it like a joke, but with an edge I didn't understand until then. He pled guilty. 3 years and 9 months. A sexual harm prevention order. His name etched into the sex offender registry for life. I didn't sleep that night. Rage pulsed through me, not just at what he'd done, but at the fact that I'd known. Not the details, not the crimes, but I'd known something was wrong. I'd seen it in his lies, in his manipulations, in the way my chest nodded every time he spoke. Debbie eventually saw the truth. She was devastated, ashamed she had defended him for so long. Matt was quieter about it, but I knew it haunted him too. As for me, I carry the weight of remembering how easily someone can fool you when you want to believe they're harmless. Eric wasn't harmless. He was a predator hiding in plain sight. And the scariest part? For years, he was my friend. It happened about 9 years ago in a city where I lived during my mid-20s. Back then, I'd spend most weekends hitting up a club on the east side that was known for its themed nights. Saturdays were goth night, and the place drew a mixed crowd. Regulars who had been going for years, college kids eager to dress in black for a night, and people just looking to get lost in the music. The place wasn't fancy. It was dim, a little grimy, with sticky floors and walls that always smelled faintly of cigarettes and old beer, but it had atmosphere. The bass rattled in your chest. Lights cut across the dance floor in dark red or blue hues, and for those hours, it felt like a world apart from everyday life. I usually went with a group of friends, and the night this happened was no different. There were 5 of us, all crammed into my friend's old sedan, laughing as we drove across town. Someone had the music up too loud, and we were already half hoarse from yelling over it by the time we got there. Walking through the club's double doors, the night felt full of possibility. My name's Megan, and I can still feel the weight of his eyes when I think about it. That's the part that sticks. The silence in his stare, heavier than the music. The place was already packed when we arrived. Bodies moved under the dim red lights, some lost in the music, some pressed close together in conversation. The floor was tacky from spilled drinks, and the ceiling fans did little to clear the haze that hung in the air. I didn't care though. I felt free in those moments. Smeared eyeliner, boots sticking to the floor, friends around me moving in rhythm. For a little while, the noise drowned out everything else. The weight of daily stress, work, loneliness, it all evaporated in the pulsing beat. Sometime after midnight, I slipped away from the dance floor to get a drink. My throat was raw, my body overheated from moving around. I pushed through the crowd, threading past couples and strangers until I reached the bar. The line stretched nearly the whole counter, and I wedged myself into the only open space, at the very end, next to a man sitting on a stool. He looked to be in his late 30s, maybe older. His frame was lean but solid, his posture steady. His skin was dark, and when he greeted me with a quiet hello, his voice carried an accent I didn't recognize at first. "Where are you from?" I asked, leaning closer so I could hear over the music. "Eritrea," he said. His voice was calm, deliberate. We made small talk while I waited for my drink. I mentioned I'd had a neighbor growing up who was from the same region, and he nodded, though he didn't smile. His eyes stayed steady on me. There was no nervous flicker, no quick glance away the way most strangers did when they caught themselves staring too long. The conversation blurred after that. Bits about music, questions about the night, the usual surface level chatter. I wasn't paying much attention. I was more focused on the bartender, on getting my drink and change, so I could slip away. But then his tone shifted, and he said words that snapped me awake. "I kill people there." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard right. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard over the music, but he just sat there, expression blank, waiting for me to respond. A nervous laugh slipped out before I could stop it. My instinct was to play it off, treat it like a joke. Maybe this was his attempt at flirting, trying to be dark, edgy, in a place where half the crowd wore crosses and chains. "You used to kill people?" I asked, hoping I'd misunderstood. He shook his head slowly, eyes locked on mine. "No, I still do." The words came out flat, emotionless, like he was stating the weather. No grin, no tension in his face, just calm. My chest tightened. I kept my hand wrapped around my glass, never letting it leave my sight. My mind raced through possibilities. Was he trying to scare me? Was he drunk and rambling? Was he serious? I forced another weak laugh, the kind you make when you're cornered. "Guess you'd have a hard time with me," I muttered. I'd fight back. His gaze didn't move. "There's no trying," he said. "If I decide to kill someone, I kill them." I felt the air leave my lungs. The bartender finally slid me my change, and I slipped away, clutching my drink like it was an anchor. I pushed back into the crowd, weaving toward my friends on the dance floor. My pulse pounded in my ears, louder than the music. My friend was still lost in the rhythm, oblivious to the way he turned on his stool to watch me. He didn't dance, didn't mingle, just stared, sipping his drink, eyes fixed on me like I was already chosen. Minutes crawled by. I pretended to dance, to laugh, but my eyes kept darting toward the bar. After a while, I saw him put down his empty glass and walk out the front door. Relief washed over me. I let myself breathe again, told myself it was just some drunk guy talking tough. I tried to shake it off, bury it in the music, in the comfort of friends nearby. Hours later, the night was winding down. The DJ for the next set had started, a different vibe, and the crowd had thinned. My friends were saying their goodbyes. I stood near the front door, waiting for my ride, while one of my friends lingered in a conversation with an acquaintance. I remember feeling the cool air from outside spilling in whenever the door opened, thinking about how good it would feel to be home. That's when I felt a hand grab me. It happened fast. He dragged me back into a corner by the wall, away from the door, away from the light. His body pressed against mine, pinning me hard, twisting my arm behind my back. My cheek scraped the wall, breath caught in my throat. The music swallowed my first attempt to yell. For a second, I froze, my brain refusing to process what was happening. His grip was iron, his presence suffocating. I could feel his breath at the back of my neck, steady and controlled, like he had done this before. Something in me snapped awake. Panic surged into fight. I shoved backward with everything I had. He loosened just enough in surprise, and I twisted, swinging my fist low and hard. Somehow, through luck or desperation, I hit him where it hurt. He doubled over, groaning, and I ran. I shoved through the crowd, heart exploding in my chest, and found my friend still talking. I yanked her away mid-sentence, words spilling out in gasps. He grabbed me. We tried for the back emergency door, but a bouncer blocked us. Front only, he said, bored, brushing off my desperate tone. I tried explaining, but he didn't listen or didn't care. Panic clawed at me. I grabbed 2 more people we knew and pulled them into our group, forcing safety in numbers. Together, we pushed through the front, my eyes darting everywhere. Every shadow was a threat. Every parked car, every corner. I expected him to step out, to grab me again, but he wasn't there. We sprinted to the car, slammed the doors shut, locked them before the engine even started. My hand shook so badly I could barely click the seatbelt. My heart pounded all the way home, my mind replaying his flat tone, his unblinking stare. The next morning, I scoured the news, certain I'd find a report of someone else attacked, maybe worse. But there was nothing. No articles, no police bulletins, just silence. I don't remember every detail of his face now. Not his clothes, not the exact cadence of his accent. But I'll never forget the way his eyes looked at me that night, as if I was already marked. I'll never forget the cold certainty in his voice when he told me killing wasn't a threat, but a fact. I never went back to that club again.